The Peterbilt died exactly 3 miles outside of Nowhere, Arizona. Jack Morrison felt the engine shudder, heard that death rattle he'd been dreading for the last 1,000 miles, and watched the temperature gauge spike into the red. He coasted to the shoulder of Route 66, the old highway that most people had forgotten existed, and sat there in the sudden silence, listening to his truck tick and groan like a dying animal. "Son of a bitch," he muttered. 48 years old, divorced, unemployed, living in a truck that just became a 4-ton paperweight. The math wasn't hard, he was screwed. Jack climbed down from the cab, his knees popping, his back aching from 14 hours behind the wheel. The Arizona night was cold, the kind of dry cold that made your lungs feel like sandpaper. Above him, more stars than he'd seen in years, but Jack wasn't in the mood for poetry. He popped the hood and stared at the engine like it might explain itself. Steam hissed. Something was leaking. Everything looked expensive. His phone had 1 bar of signal and 12% battery. He tried calling the mechanic he knew in Flagstaff, but it went to voicemail. He tried his brother in California, same thing. He tried his ex-wife before he could stop himself, and she actually answered. "What, Jack?" Her voice was tired, done with him, and he couldn't blame her. "Nothing. Sorry. Wrong number." He hung up before she could tell him what a loser he was. He already knew. Through the darkness, maybe a quarter mile up the road, he saw a flicker of light. A sign, half of it burned out, E.T. a diner, or what was left of one. Jack grabbed his jacket, locked the cab, not that anyone would steal a dead truck, and started walking. The wind cut through his flannel shirt, carrying the smell of sage and diesel. His boots crunched on gravel. A semi blasted past him doing 90, the wash of air nearly knocking him over. The diner looked like it had been there since Eisenhower. Faded turquoise paint, chrome trim, a neon sign that struggled to spell out "Eat" in flickering pink letters. 3 cars in the parking lot, all of them older than Jack. He pushed through the door and was hit by the smell of burnt coffee and old grease. A bell dinged. The place was nearly empty, a couple of truckers in the back booth, heads down over their phones, and at the counter, a woman in a wheelchair. Jack's first thought was that she didn't belong here. His second thought was that nobody belonged here, including him. She was maybe late 30s, dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing a leather jacket that had seen better days. A cigarette burned in the ashtray beside her coffee cup, even though there was probably a no-smoking law. She didn't seem to care. Jack took a stool 2 down from her, keeping his distance. The waitress, 60 if she was a day, name tag said Doris, shuffled over. "Coffee?" "Yeah." "Black." Doris poured without enthusiasm and shuffled away. Jack wrapped his hands around the mug, trying to warm up. His phone was down to 8% battery. He had 247 in his checking account. A tow truck would cost at least $200, and that was before repairs. He was doing the math in his head, trying to figure out which bills he could ignore, when the woman spoke. "Your truck?" Jack looked over. She was watching him in the mirror behind the counter, her eyes sharp despite the late hour. "Yeah, died about a quarter mile back." "Engine?" "Think so. Temperature spiked. Could be the radiator. Could be the head gasket. Could be a lot of things." She nodded, took a drag off her cigarette. "You look like you're doing funeral math." "Funeral math?" "Trying to figure out how much it'll cost to bury something that's already dead." Jack almost smiled. "Yeah, something like that." She turned her wheelchair to face him directly. "Della." "Jack." They didn't shake hands. That would have required one of them to move, and neither seemed inclined. "You going somewhere or running from something?" Della asked. "Does it matter?" "Not really, just making conversation." Jack took a sip of coffee. It was terrible, but it was hot. Little of both, I guess. "You?" "Waiting for a miracle." She stubbed out her cigarette and immediately lit another. "Or a ride, whichever comes first." "Where you headed?" "Albuquerque, you?" "Nowhere specific. I was going to LA, but that plan just died with my transmission." Della studied him for a moment. "You look like a man who's run out of options." "That obvious?" "Takes one to know one." Doris came back over, refilled Jack's coffee without asking. "You eating or just warming up?" "Just coffee," Jack said. "Same," Della added. Doris shuffled away, muttering something about people taking up space. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Jack stared at his reflection in the mirror. Graying beard, bloodshot eyes, the face of a man who'd driven too far and arrived nowhere. Behind him, one of the truckers in the booth laughed at something on his phone, the sound harsh and out of place. Jack's mouth moved before his brain could stop it. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the way Della was looking at him, like she could see through his bullshit. Maybe he just needed to say something true to someone who wouldn't judge him. I haven't had sex in 9 months. The words hung in the air like cigarette smoke. Della didn't laugh, didn't look shocked. She took a slow drag, exhaled toward the ceiling, and set her cigarette in the ashtray. "Congratulations," she said flatly. "I haven't walked in 10 years. Want to trade problems or you looking to fix yours?" Jack felt his face heat up. "I didn't mean—" "What? You didn't mean to announce your dry spell to a stranger in a wheelchair at midnight in a shit diner on a dead highway? Then what did you mean?" Jack opened his mouth, closed it. "I don't know, I'm sorry, that was stupid." "It was honest," Della corrected. "Stupid and honest aren't the same thing." She finished her coffee, signaled Doris for the check. "Here's the thing, Jack. I don't do pity and I don't do heroes, but I need to get to Albuquerque and you look like you need something to do besides feel sorry for yourself. You got a truck? A dead one. Can it be fixed? Maybe. If I can afford it. How much you got?" "About $250. Della pulled out her wallet, counted out bills. "I've got $400. We pool our money, get your truck running, you give me a ride to Albuquerque. Deal?" Jack stared at her. "You don't know me. I could rob you. You could try." She patted her jacket and Jack saw the outline of something heavy in the pocket. "But you won't. You're not that kind of broke. You're just regular broke." "What makes you so sure?" "Because regular broke guys don't announce their sexual drought to strangers. Dangerous guys keep that kind of loneliness to themselves." Jack didn't know whether to be insulted or impressed. "Why do you need a ride? Can't you take a bus?" "Buses don't like wheelchairs." "And I don't like buses." She wheeled toward the door. "So what's it going to be? We sit here feeling sorry for ourselves or we do something about it?" Jack looked at his empty coffee cup, his dead phone, his empty future. Then he looked at Della, waiting by the door, impatient and sharp-edged and somehow exactly what this moment needed. "Okay," he said. "Deal. Good. But one rule. You try to play the hero or feel sorry for me, I roll out at the next exit, wheels and all." "Clear? Clear. Then let's go see what's wrong with your piece of shit truck." She pushed through the door into the night, and after a moment, Jack followed. He had no idea what he was getting into, but for the first time in 9 months, he felt something other than numb. Getting Della and her wheelchair into the cab of Jack's Peterbilt was harder than either of them wanted to admit. "I can do it myself," Della snapped, when Jack reached to help. "I know you can, but it's 8 feet off the ground. So I'm not watching you break your neck to prove a point." She glared at him, but finally nodded. "Fine, but you follow my lead. I tell you what to do, not the other way around." It took 10 minutes and a lot of swearing, but they managed. Jack lifted the wheelchair into the cab first, then helped Della transfer from chair to seat. She was surprisingly strong. Her arms were muscled from years of pushing herself around, and she moved with practiced efficiency. Once she was settled, Jack climbed into the driver's seat and turned the key. Nothing, not even a click. "Well," Della said, "at least it's consistent." Jack popped the hood again and climbed down with a flashlight. Della rolled down the window. "What are you seeing?" "The radiator hose blew. There's coolant everywhere." "But that wouldn't kill the battery." "Check your connections." Jack did. The battery terminals were corroded, the negative cable barely attached. He cleaned them with his shirt, reconnected everything, then climbed back up. "Try it now," Della said. Jack turned the key. The engine turned over, coughed and caught. It ran rough, shaking the cab, but it was running. "We need coolant," Jack said, "and that hose needs to be replaced. But it'll get us to the next town." "How far?" "Maybe 20 miles. There's a truck stop in Seligman." "Then let's move before this thing changes its mind." Jack put the truck in gear and pulled back onto Route 66. The engine complained. The temperature gauge climbed higher than he liked, but they were moving. Della lit a cigarette, cracked the window. "You mind?" Jack asked, nodding at the smoke. "Yeah, I mind. But it's my lungs, so deal with it." Jack decided not to argue. The woman had just given him half her money and gotten him moving again. She'd earned the right to smoke in his cab. They drove in silence for a while. The highway was empty, stretching out into darkness. The headlights carved a tunnel through the night, and beyond it, nothing but desert and stars. "So why Albuquerque?" Jack finally asked. "My brother." "You two close?" "We were." Before? Before what? Before I told him his fiancée was cheating on him and he decided to blame me instead of her. Della exhaled smoke. That was 10 years ago. Haven't spoken since. So why now? Because he's dying. Cancer. And apparently when you're dying you get sentimental about family. Jack glanced at her. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're all dying. He's just got a schedule. The bluntness should have been off-putting, but Jack found it refreshing. Everyone in his life had spent the last year tiptoeing around him, treating him like broken glass. Della didn't do that. What about you? Della asked. What's your sob story? You don't pull punches, do you? Life's too short. Besides, you already told me you haven't gotten laid in 9 months. Might as well give me the rest. Jack gripped the steering wheel tighter. Wife left me. Company laid me off. So I've been hauling independent loads for 6 months, barely making enough to keep diesel in the tank. This truck's the only thing I own, and it's held together with duct tape and prayer. So the no-sex thing is because of the divorce? The divorce? The stress? The drinking too much? The not being worth a damn? Take your pick. You blame yourself. It wasn't a question. I blame both of us, Jack said. But yeah, I could have been better. Could have been home more. Could have actually given a shit about something other than the road. Let me guess. She wanted you to quit trucking, get a normal job, be a normal husband. Something like that. Della laughed, a short, bitter sound. Normal's overrated. Normal people are boring as hell. You say that like it's a bad thing. It is. Normal people don't end up on Route 66 at midnight in a dying truck with a stranger. Normal people play it safe, live small, and wonder why they feel dead inside. Jack wasn't sure if she was talking about him or herself. They reached Seligman just after 2 a.m. The truck stop was one of those massive 24-hour places. Diesel pumps, a repair garage, a convenience store that sold everything from motor oil to postcards. Jack pulled up to the garage bay. A mechanic appeared, young guy with a name tag that said, Tyler, looking annoyed to be working the graveyard shift. What's the problem? Blown radiator hose, need a replacement and coolant. Tyler looked at the truck, then at Jack's haggard face. I can do it, but it'll take an hour, and it's going to run you $350. $350? For a hose? And labor. And a full coolant flush since you've been running hot. You want it done or not? Jack looked at Della. She shrugged. Split it? Yeah. Then do it, Jack told Tyler. They left the truck with the mechanic and went into the convenience store. It was aggressively bright after the darkness of the highway, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A clerk behind bulletproof glass watched them with bored suspicion. Della rolled toward the coffee station while Jack grabbed supplies, water, protein bars, chips. When he found her, she'd poured 2 cups of coffee and was adding an alarming amount of sugar to one. That for me? Jack asked. Unless you want black motor oil. They sat at a plastic table near the window, watching the mechanic work on Jack's truck through the smudged glass. Can I ask you something? Jack said. You're gonna anyway. The accident. What happened? Della took a sip of coffee, her expression unreadable. I-40, snowstorm. Semi-jackknifed in front of us. My fiancé was driving. He swerved. We hit ice, flipped 3 times. He died on impact. I woke up in a hospital 3 days later and couldn't feel my legs. Jesus, I'm sorry. That's the 2nd time you've apologized for something that's not your fault. You do that a lot? Apparently. Well, stop. I'm not interested in your pity. What happened, happened. I survived. That's more than Kevin got. Kevin was your fiancé. Yeah. And before you ask, no, I don't feel guilty that I lived and he died. I feel angry that I didn't get a choice. But guilt? She shook her head. Guilt's for people who did something wrong. I was just sitting in the passenger seat. Jack envied that clarity. He'd spent 9 months drowning in guilt over things he could and couldn't control. You're different than I expected, Jack said. What did you expect? Inspirational cripple? Brave little wheelchair warrior overcoming adversity? Something like that. Della laughed. Sorry to disappoint. I'm just a bitter asshole on wheels. You're not that bitter. Give it time. They sat in silence for a while, drinking bad coffee and watching the mechanic work. Around them, truckers came and went. Men and women who looked as exhausted as Jack felt. People living on the margins of the country, keeping America moving while America forgot they existed. So, Della said eventually, the sex thing. You miss it? Jack nearly choked on his coffee. What? The sex? Do you miss it? Or do you just miss not feeling alone? Is there a difference? Huge difference. One's physical, the other's existential. Jack thought about it. Both, I guess. The touching, yeah, but also just having someone give a damn whether you come home at night. Your ex doesn't. My ex is dating a dentist in Phoenix. Pretty sure she's forgotten I exist. Della nodded slowly. Kevin used to say I was hard to love. Too prickly, too independent. I told him if he wanted soft and dependent, he should get a puppy. What did he say? He stayed for 6 years, right up until the truck that killed him. Her voice was flat, matter of fact, but Jack heard the pain underneath. You loved him. I did. Doesn't mean we were good for each other. Through the window, Tyler the mechanic gave them a thumbs up. The truck was ready. They gathered their supplies and headed back out. Jack paid his share, $175, leaving him with $72 in his account. Della paid hers without comment. Jack climbed into the cab, and this time when he turned the key, the engine started smooth and strong. The temperature gauge stayed in the green. Where to? Jack asked. Albuquerque's still 300 miles, but neither of us has slept. There's a motel about 10 miles up. We should crash for a few hours. Jack knew she was right, but the thought of a motel room made him uncomfortable in a way he couldn't quite name. Della must have read his face. Relax, trucker. I'm getting my own room. I don't do pity fucks either. Jack felt his face heat up. I wasn't. Sure you weren't. She grinned. Drive. Jack drove. The motel was called the Desert Rose, which was optimistic considering it looked like the desert had long since choked out anything resembling a rose. Single-story, L-shaped, pink stucco fading to grey, with a neon sign that spelled out vacancy in letters that buzzed like dying insects. Jack pulled into the parking lot. Only 3 other cars, all of them looking as temporary as the people staying here. Charming, Della said. It's cheap. That's the spirit. The office was barely bigger than a closet. A man in his 70s sat behind a desk, watching a black and white western on a tiny TV. He looked up when they entered, his eyes lingering on Della's wheelchair before meeting Jack's. 2 rooms, Jack said. $80 each. You take credit? Cash only. Of course. Jack pulled out his wallet. He had $72 left. I've only got $72 in cash. The old man looked at Della. What about you? I can cover 1 room, Della said, but I'm keeping my money for food. The old man considered, then sighed. Fine. $150 for both rooms. But you cause any trouble, I'm calling the cops. We're too tired for trouble, Jack said. The man handed over 2 keys attached to plastic tags. Rooms 7 and 8. Checkouts at 10. They were side-by-side rooms at the far end of the motel. Jack helped get Della's wheelchair out of the cab, easier this time now that they'd figured out the rhythm, and waited while she unlocked her door. See you in a few hours, she said. Yeah, thanks for, the money, the ride. We're not done yet. Don't thank me until we get to Albuquerque. She rolled inside and closed the door. Jack heard the chain lock slide into place. His room was exactly what he expected. Double bed with a suspicious brown stain on the comforter, TV bolted to the dresser, bathroom that smelled like industrial cleaner, trying to cover up decades of bad decisions. Jack dropped his bag, sat on the bed, and immediately regretted looking at the comforter too closely. He stripped it off, lay down on the sheets, which were thin but clean, and stared at the ceiling. His phone buzzed. Text from his brother. Call me when you can. Mom's asking about you. Jack ignored it. He didn't have the energy for family right now. He thought about Della in the next room, wondered if she was having as much trouble sleeping as he was, wondered what it was like to carry that much weight. The accident, the disability, 10 years of whatever she'd been through since. She was right about one thing. Jack had been feeling sorry for himself. Divorced and unemployed seemed like the end of the world, until you met someone who couldn't walk and was still moving forward. Jack's phone buzzed again. This time it was his ex-wife. Did you just try to call me at midnight? Are you drunk again? He typed back, wrong number, sorry. Then, because he couldn't help himself, how's the dentist? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response. Jack set the phone aside and closed his eyes. He was asleep in minutes. He woke to pounding on the wall. Jack jolted up, disoriented. The room was still dark, but light was leaking around the curtains. He checked his phone, 6:47 a.m. He'd slept for almost 4 hours. The pounding came again from Della's room, followed by shouting, her voice angry and loud. Jack was moving before he thought about it. He grabbed the room key and ran outside, tried Della's door. Locked. Della! I'm fine, just... Her voice broke off into more shouting, but not at him. At someone else. Jack's heart pounded. He hammered on the door. "Della, open up!" "Go away, Jack!" More shouting. A man's voice this time, slurred and aggressive. "Fuck it." Jack kicked the door. Once, twice. The lock splintered and the door crashed open. Della's room was similar to his, but the scene inside was chaos. Della was backed into the corner by the bathroom, still in her wheelchair, and a man, maybe 40, unshaven, wearing stained jeans and a Coors t-shirt, was standing over her, his face red with rage. "You owe me!" the man was shouting. "You think you can just leave after everything?" "I don't owe you anything, Danny," Della shot back. "Now get out of my room before I—" She saw Jack in the doorway, and her expression shifted, anger mixing with something else. Relief? Annoyance? Danny turned, saw Jack, and his face twisted into a sneer. "Who the hell are you?" "Friend of hers," Jack said, keeping his voice level. "And you need to leave. This is between me and her. Stay out of it." "Can't do that." Danny took a step toward Jack, swaying slightly. "Drunk or high or both? You want to make this a problem?" Jack was bigger, but Danny had the desperate edge of someone with nothing to lose. This could go bad fast. Then Della pulled a gun from her jacket pocket, the heavy thing Jack had seen her pat earlier, and pointed it at Danny. "Get out," she said flatly. Danny froze, his eyes going wide. "Della, come on. Don't be— I said, get out." Her voice cracked like a whip. Danny stumbled backward, hands up, and practically ran past Jack out the door. They heard him get in a car, the beat-up sedan Jack had noticed earlier, and peel out of the parking lot. Silence filled the room. Della lowered the gun, her hands shaking. She set it on the bed and pressed her palms against her eyes. "Jesus," she whispered. Jack stepped inside, closed what was left of the door behind him. "You okay?" "Define okay." "Not shot. Not hurt." "Then yeah, I'm okay." "Who was that?" Della took a breath, composing herself. "My ex. Sort of. Danny. We were together for about 6 months 2 years ago. It was a mistake. I ended it. He didn't take it well. He followed you here?" "Must have. He's been texting me for weeks saying we need to talk. I blocked his number. Guess he decided to take a more direct approach." Jack looked at the gun on the bed. "Is that real?" "Very. You know how to use it?" Della gave him a flat look. "Kevin taught me before he died. Said a woman alone needed to know how to protect herself. Guess he was right." Jack sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to touch the gun. "You can't stay here. Danny might come back." "I know. We should move. It's not even 7 a.m. "So, you got somewhere better to be?" Jack almost laughed. "No." "Then let's pack up and go. I'm done with this place." They gathered their things quickly. Jack helped Della get her wheelchair into the cab again, and this time it felt almost routine. They left the desert rose in the rearview mirror just as the sun was breaking over the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold. Neither of them spoke for the first 10 miles. Finally, Della said, "I'm sorry you had to see that. Don't apologize. I'm glad I was there. I had it under control." "I know you did." Jack glanced at her. "But you shouldn't have to. That's life, Jack. Sometimes you handle shit alone because there's nobody else to handle it for you. That why you're going to see your brother? Because you're tired of handling it alone?" Della was quiet for a long time. "Maybe. Or maybe I just want to say goodbye before it's too late." "I don't know. Does it matter?" "It matters to you." She looked out the window at the passing desert. "Kevin used to say I had walls, that I wouldn't let anyone close. He was right. But walls keep you safe. They also keep you alone. Better alone than hurt." Jack thought about his own walls, the ones he'd built after his wife left, the ones that kept him in his truck, driving endless miles to nowhere rather than dealing with his life. "Maybe," Jack said. "Or maybe we just tell ourselves that so we don't have to try." Della turned to look at him, something shifting in her expression. "When did you get wise?" "I'm not. I'm just talking out loud." They drove on toward Albuquerque, 2 broken people in a dying truck, carrying their walls with them, but maybe, just maybe, starting to see the cracks. By noon, they were deep into New Mexico. The landscape had shifted. Less desert scrub, more mesas and red rock formations that looked like something out of a western. The sun was brutal, turning the cab into an oven, despite the air conditioning that worked intermittently at best. Jack had stripped down to a t-shirt. Della had tied her hair up and rolled up the sleeves of her jacket. They'd stopped twice for gas and bathroom breaks, the routine getting easier each time. How far to Albuquerque? Jack asked. About 80 miles. We could be there by mid-afternoon. And then what? And then I see my brother, say whatever needs saying, and figure out the rest. You got a place to stay? I'll find something. Jack wanted to say, you can stay with me, but he didn't have a place either. Just the truck. And the truck wasn't exactly wheelchair accessible. They stopped for lunch at a roadside diner that looked slightly less depressing than the last one. This one had actual customers, families on road trips, a couple of bikers, an old man reading a newspaper at the counter. They took a booth by the window. The waitress brought menus and water, eyeing Della's wheelchair briefly before moving on. Della ordered a burger and fries. Jack got the same plus coffee. I've been thinking, Della said once the waitress left. Dangerous. She ignored the joke. About what you said. The 9 months thing. Jack felt his face heat up. I shouldn't have said that. Why not? It's true, isn't it? Yeah, but nothing. You said something honest. Most people don't do that. She stirred her water with a straw. Want to know the truth? It's been longer for me. Jack didn't know what to say to that. 2 years, Della continued. Since Danny. And before him, 3 years since Kevin died. So yeah, I get it. The loneliness. The feeling like you're disappearing because nobody's touching you, nobody's seeing you. I thought you didn't do pity. This isn't pity. This is honesty. She met his eyes. You feel it too, right? This thing between us. Jack's throat went dry. I don't know what you mean. Liar. The waitress brought their food, giving them a moment. Jack picked up his burger but didn't eat it, his appetite suddenly gone. Della, look, I'm not proposing marriage. I'm not even proposing anything. I'm just saying there's heat here and we both feel it, and pretending we don't is bullshit. So what are you saying? I'm saying we're two consenting adults. We're both lonely. We're stuck in a truck together for another few hours, and life's too short to pretend we're not attracted to each other. Jack set down his burger. You're serious. Do I look like I joke about sex? I don't know. I've known you for 12 hours. Exactly. No history, no expectations, no promises. Just two people being honest about what they want. She took a bite of her burger, chewed, swallowed. But if you're not interested, say so. I can handle rejection. Jack looked at her, really looked at her. The sharp angles of her face, the intelligence in her eyes, the way she held herself with a confidence that disability hadn't touched. She was beautiful, in a way he hadn't let himself acknowledge until now. I'm interested, he heard himself say. Good. Then finish your burger. I want to get to Albuquerque before dark. They ate in charged silence. Every movement felt loaded with meaning. The way Della's lips wrapped around her straw, the way Jack's hand gripped his coffee cup, the space between them that suddenly felt impossibly small and impossibly vast at the same time. By the time they got back to the truck, the air between them was electric. Jack helped Della into the cab, and when his hand touched her shoulder to steady her, she turned her head and their faces were inches apart. Jack, he kissed her. It wasn't gentle, it was hungry, desperate, the kiss of two people who'd been starving and finally found food. Della's hand came up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer. Her lips tasted like coffee and salt and something uniquely her. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Jesus, Jack muttered. Yeah. Della's eyes were dark, pupils dilated. Get in the truck. Jack didn't argue. They drove for an hour in silence thick with tension. Every time Jack glanced at Della, she was looking at him. Every time she shifted in her seat, he felt it like a physical touch. There's a motel up ahead, Della said finally. In Grants, we should stop. It's only 3 p.m. I know what time it is. Jack pulled off at the next exit. The motel in Grants was slightly better than the Desert Rose. Newer, cleaner, with a parking lot that didn't look like a crime scene waiting to happen. Jack got one room this time. Neither of them discussed it. Getting Della inside was a blur. Jack was hyper-aware of every touch, every moment their hands made contact. By the time they were alone in the room, his heart was pounding like he'd run a marathon. Della locked the door, then turned to face him. Last chance to back out. I'm not backing out. Good. She wheeled toward him, and Jack met her halfway, dropping to his knees so they were at eye level. This time when they kissed, it was slower, deeper, exploratory. Della's hands moved to his face, his hair pulling him closer. Jack's hands moved to her waist and he felt her stiffen slightly. Wait, she said, pulling back. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I need you to understand something. She took a breath. My legs don't work, but everything else does. I feel everything from the waist up, but below—" She gestured vaguely. "It's different. Not bad, just different. You need to be okay with that." "I'm okay with that." "Are you? Because most guys—" "I'm not most guys." Jack cupped her face in his hands. "And I don't care about your legs. I care about you." Something in Della's expression cracked, just for a moment, before she composed herself again. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." What happened next was awkward and fumbling and sometimes frustrating, and ultimately didn't matter because it was real. They figured it out together. What worked, what didn't. How to navigate the physical realities of Della's body without making it clinical or sad. Jack had never been so present during sex. Every touch was deliberate. Every response mattered. It wasn't the desperate, mindless coupling he'd expected. It was intimate in a way he'd forgotten sex could be. Afterward, they lay on the bed, Della on her back, Jack on his side facing her. His hand rested on her stomach, feeling her breathe. "Well," Della said eventually, "that was awkward? I was going to say needed, but yeah, awkward works too." Jack laughed. "Sorry. Don't be. Awkward is honest." She turned her head to look at him. "Besides, it gets better with practice." "Is that an invitation?" "Maybe." She traced a finger along his jaw. "You surprised me." "How?" "You didn't treat me like glass. Most guys, they're so worried about hurting me or doing something wrong that they're not really there. But you—" She smiled slightly. "You were there. Where else would I be? You'd be surprised." They lay in silence for a while, skin against skin, the afternoon light fading through the curtains. Jack hadn't felt this calm in months, maybe years. "Can I ask you something?" Della said. "Yeah. Why'd your wife leave?" "Really?" Jack was quiet for a long moment. "Because I stopped seeing her. Not physically, I mean I stopped actually seeing her. She became part of the routine. Work, drive, home, sleep, repeat. I forgot that she was a person with needs and wants and dreams. I just stopped paying attention. Did you love her?" "I thought I did, but maybe I just loved the idea of having someone, of not being alone." Della nodded slowly. "Kevin used to say I loved my independence more than I loved him. He was probably right. I wanted him there, but I also wanted to be able to leave whenever I wanted. Turns out you can't have both." "Do you regret it?" "Regret what? Choosing independence?" "Yeah, sometimes. Especially at 3 a.m. when the apartment's quiet and the walls feel like they're closing in." She turned onto her side, facing him. "But then I remember what it felt like to have someone who needed me too much, and I think maybe I made the right call." "You think we're both just broken?" Jack asked. "Probably. But maybe broken people fit together better than whole ones." Jack kissed her forehead. "That's either profound or depressing. Can't it be both?" They stayed in the motel room until evening, talking and dozing and eventually making love again. Slower this time, less desperate. When the sun finally set, they ordered pizza from a place down the street and ate it cross-legged on the bed, talking about nothing and everything. "I should call my brother," Della said around 9 p.m. "Let him know I'll be there tomorrow." "You nervous?" "Terrified." She picked at the pizza crust. "We haven't spoken in 10 years, Jack. What am I supposed to say? Hey, sorry about telling you your fiancé was cheating. Hope the cancer's not too bad." "Start with hello. See where it goes." "Profound advice, trucker." "I try." Della picked up her phone, stared at it for a long moment, then dialed. Jack tried to give her privacy, but in the small room he could hear every word. "Hello?" A man's voice, weak and raspy. "Michael, it's Della." Silence. Then, "Della? Jesus, it's really you." "Yeah, it's me. I'm in New Mexico. I'll be in Albuquerque tomorrow, if you still want to see me." "Of course I want to see you." His voice cracked. "God, Della. It's been so long. I know, I'm sorry for everything." "No, I'm sorry. I was an idiot. You were right about Claire. She cleaned out my bank account and left 6 months after the wedding, but I was too proud to admit it." Della closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I should have been there for you. You're here now. That's what matters." They talked for another 10 minutes, making plans to meet tomorrow afternoon. When Della hung up, she was crying openly. Jack pulled her close and she buried her face in his shoulder. "He forgave me," she whispered. "Just like that. 10 years and he just forgave me. Maybe he's been waiting for you to call." Maybe. They held each other as the night deepened, two broken people finding comfort in being broken together. They left Grant's at sunrise, the truck eating up the remaining 60 miles to Albuquerque in comfortable silence. The landscape shifted again, more urban sprawl creeping out to meet the desert, billboards advertising casinos and injury lawyers, the mountains rising purple in the distance. Jack had never been to Albuquerque. It looked like most mid-sized American cities, sprawling, car-dependent, a mix of adobe architecture and strip malls. Della navigated using her phone, directing him through surface streets until they reached a quiet neighborhood in the northeast part of the city. "There," Della said, pointing to a small ranch house with a well-maintained yard. "That's his place." Jack pulled up to the curb and killed the engine. Della sat very still, staring at the house. "You okay?" Jack asked. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." Jack helped her out of the cab and into her wheelchair. As they approached the front door, it opened and a man appeared. Michael looked like Della. Same dark hair, same sharp features, but illness had hollowed him out. He was thin, moving carefully, like every step hurt, but his eyes lit up when he saw his sister. "Della," he breathed. "Michael." They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Michael stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her, and Della grabbed him back and they both started crying. Jack stood awkwardly to the side, feeling like an intruder on something private and profound. Eventually, Michael pulled back and noticed Jack. "Who's this?" "Jack Morrison. He gave me a ride." "From where?" "Arizona. Long story." Michael extended a hand and Jack shook it. The man's grip was weak but sincere. "Thank you for bringing her. Come inside, both of you." The house was cozy, lived in but neat, with photos on the walls and plants by the windows. Michael made coffee while Della wheeled around looking at everything, taking in her brother's life. "How bad is it?" Della finally asked, cutting through the small talk. Michael set down his coffee cup. "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. They gave me 6 months. That was 4 months ago." "Jesus, Michael. I know it's what it is." He smiled sadly. "I've made my peace with it. Mostly. Are you in pain?" "Some days worse than others, but I've got good drugs." He looked at Della with fierce intensity. "I'm glad you're here. I didn't think you'd come." "I almost didn't." "What changed your mind?" Della glanced at Jack. "I met someone who reminded me that life's too short to hold grudges." Michael followed her gaze, a knowing smile crossing his face. "This the trucker?" "This is the trucker. He know about you, about us. Some of it." Michael studied Jack for a moment. "You take care of her?" "She doesn't need taking care of," Jack said. "But yeah, I'm trying." "Good." They spent the afternoon talking, Della and Michael catching up on 10 years of missed life. Jack mostly listened, learning about their childhood in Texas, their parents who died in a car accident 15 years ago, the ways they'd survived together, and then fallen apart. Around 4 p.m., Michael started to fade, the pain and exhaustion catching up with him. Della noticed immediately. "We should go, let you rest." "No, stay, please, I've got a guest room. Both of you can stay as long as you need." Della looked at Jack. "Is that okay?" "It's your call." "Okay, we'll stay tonight. But then I need to figure out what comes next." Michael showed them to the guest room, small but comfortable, with a double bed and a window that looked out on the backyard. Jack brought in their bags, while Della talked quietly with her brother in the hallway. When she came back in, she looked exhausted and relieved and sad all at once. "How you holding up?" Jack asked. "I don't know. It's surreal. 10 years, and it's like no time passed. But also like everything's different." She wheeled to the window, looking out at the fading light. "He's dying, Jack, really dying. And I wasted 10 years being angry over something that doesn't even matter anymore. You're here now. But for how long? 2 months, 1 month, and then what? He dies and I'm alone again?" Jack knelt beside her wheelchair. "You're not alone." "Aren't I? In a few days, you'll go back to your life. I'll figure out mine. This," she gestured between them, "this isn't real. It's just two lonely people finding comfort." "Is that what you think this is?" "Isn't it?" Jack took her hand. "Maybe it started that way, but I don't think that's what it is now." Della looked at him, her eyes wet. "What is it then?" "I don't know, but I'd like to find out." She pulled him close, kissing him hard, and they tumbled onto the bed, desperate and needing and real. Later, as they lay tangled together, Della whispered, "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of this. Of you. Of wanting something I might not get to keep." "Me too." "So what do we do?" Jack kissed her temple. "We stay. We figure it out. We stop running. You make it sound easy." It's not easy, but maybe it's worth it. Della was quiet for a long time, then, okay, 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 I'll stay. We'll figure it out. Jack held her tighter, feeling like he'd just been given something he didn't deserve but desperately needed. Outside, the sun set over Albuquerque, and inside, two broken people decided to try being whole together. The next week passed in a strange, suspended reality. Jack and Della settled into Michael's house, creating routines that felt almost domestic. Jack fixed things: the leaky faucet, the loose step, the garage door that wouldn't close. Della cooked meals, surprisingly well for someone who claimed to live on gas station food. Michael held court from his recliner, telling stories and laughing despite the pain. But reality had a way of intruding. On the 8th day, Michael collapsed while trying to get to the bathroom. Jack heard the crash and found him on the floor, conscious but weak, his face grey with pain. "Don't call an ambulance," Michael gasped. "It won't help." Jack called anyway. Della rode with him to the hospital, while Jack followed in the truck. The ER doctor was young, efficient, and blunt. "The cancer's progressing faster than expected. His liver's failing. We can make him comfortable, but there's nothing else we can do." "How long?" Della asked, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Days, maybe a week." They brought Michael home that night with hospice care arrangements. A nurse would come daily. Pain medication would be delivered. Everything was organized, clinical, inevitable. Jack stood in the kitchen making coffee he didn't want, while Della sat with her brother. He heard their voices, low, intimate, saying things that needed to be said. His phone rang. His ex-wife. "Jack? Finally. I've been calling for a week. Sorry, I've been busy." "Doing what?" "Mom said you quit trucking." "I didn't quit. I'm just taking a break." "Where are you?" "Albuquerque." "What the hell are you doing in Albuquerque?" Jack looked toward the living room where Della sat beside her dying brother, helping a friend. His ex-wife was quiet for a moment. "You sound different." "Different how?" "I don't know, less angry, less lost." "Maybe I am." "Jack, I didn't call to fight. I called because I wanted to say I'm sorry for how things ended. For giving up on us." Jack was surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "I'm sorry too, I wasn't a good husband." "No, but you weren't a bad one either. We wanted different things." "Yeah. Are you okay?" "Really?" Jack thought about it. "I think so. For the first time in a long time, I think I am." "Good. I'm glad." She paused. "Take care of yourself, Jack." "You too." After hanging up, Jack felt lighter somehow, like he'd finally let go of something he'd been carrying too long. Della appeared in the doorway. "Was that your ex?" "Yeah." "Everything okay?" "Actually, yeah, it is." Della wheeled closer. "Michael wants to talk to you." "To me?" "To you." Jack found Michael in his bedroom, propped up on pillows, looking small and fragile in the big bed, but his eyes were alert. "Sit," Michael said, gesturing to the chair beside the bed. Jack sat. "I don't have long," Michael said without preamble. "Days, they said, so I'm going to be direct." "Okay. Are you going to take care of my sister?" Jack chose his words carefully. "She doesn't need taking care of." "I know that. But are you going to be there for her? After I'm gone?" "If she'll let me." Michael smiled slightly. "She will. She's scared, but she will." He reached out and Jack took his hand. "She's been alone too long. Don't let her go back to that." "I won't. Promise me." "I promise." Michael closed his eyes, exhausted from the brief conversation. "Good. Now get out of here. Go be with her." Jack found Della in the guest room, packing her bag. "What are you doing?" Jack asked. "I can't watch this. I can't watch him die." "Della, don't. Don't tell me I have to stay. Don't tell me it's what he needs." "I can't do it, Jack." Jack crossed the room and took the bag from her hands. "Then we'll both stay together. You don't have to do this alone." Della crumbled. Jack caught her, holding her while she sobbed, deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place she'd kept locked for 10 years. "I don't know how to do this," she gasped between sobs. "I don't know how to lose him. Nobody does, but you do it anyway, because he's your brother and he loves you and you love him." "I'm not strong enough." "Yes, you are. I've seen you, Della. You're the strongest person I know." She clung to him, and Jack realized he'd never felt more needed. Not by his ex-wife, not by anyone. This was different. This was real. They stayed, both of them. Michael died on a Tuesday morning 3 days later, with Della holding his hand and Jack standing behind her, his hands on her shoulders. It was quiet, peaceful. The hospice nurse said it was a good death if there was such a thing. Della didn't cry. She just sat there holding her brother's hand until the nurse gently suggested they step out while she took care of things. In the living room, Della stared at nothing. Jack didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. He just stayed close. "I need to call people," Della finally said. "Make arrangements. There's so much to do. I'll help. You don't have to. I want to." The next 3 days were a blur of phone calls, paperwork, funeral home visits. Michael had wanted to be cremated, his ashes scattered in the mountains north of town, where he and Della had hiked as kids. The memorial service was small, a few neighbors, some people from Michael's work, a couple of old friends who'd stayed in touch. The pastor spoke about faith and reunion. People shared memories. Della gave a eulogy that was short and honest and devastating. "My brother was stubborn and forgiving and braver than I ever was," she said. "He forgave me when he didn't have to. He loved me when I didn't deserve it. And now he's gone and I have to figure out how to live in a world without him." Her voice broke. Jack, sitting in the front row, saw her hands grip the podium. "But I think he'd want me to keep going, to not give up, to find whatever happiness I can." She looked directly at Jack. "To not be afraid of wanting things." After the service, they drove up to the mountains. It was just Della, Jack, and the urn containing Michael's ashes. They hiked, Jack pushing Della's wheelchair on the accessible trail, until they found a spot overlooking the city. Della opened the urn. The wind caught the ashes, carrying them out over the valley. "Goodbye, Michael," she whispered. "Thank you for forgiving me." They stood there until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed impossibly beautiful for such a sad day. On the drive back, Della said, "I'm selling the house. Michael's house. He left it to me in his will, but I don't want it. Too many memories, too many ghosts." "What will you do?" Della was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. I've been living in Phoenix for 5 years, alone, working data entry from home because nobody wants to hire a cripple for a real job. It's been small, safe, lonely." She looked at Jack. "I don't want to go back to that." "Then don't. But what else is there?" Jack pulled the truck over to the side of the road, turned to face her. "Come with me," he said. "What?" "Come with me. On the road. We'll figure it out together." "Jack, that's crazy. You live in a truck." "So we get an RV, something accessible. We'll haul freight, take the long way, see the country. Together." "You're serious?" "Completely. Della, I spent 9 months feeling dead inside. Then I met you and I felt alive again. I don't want to go back to dead, do you?" Della stared at him, her eyes searching his face. "You'd really do that? Change your entire life?" "I already changed it. When I picked you up in that diner. Everything after that has been figuring out what comes next. What if it doesn't work? What if we drive each other crazy? Then we figure it out. But at least we try." Della reached out and took his hand. "Okay, okay, okay. Let's do it. Let's be crazy together." Jack pulled her into a kiss that tasted like salt and promise and new beginnings. 2 months later, Jack and Della stood in the parking lot of an RV dealership outside of Phoenix, looking at a 30-foot Class C motorhome that had been modified for wheelchair accessibility. "It's expensive," Della said. "We can afford it. Your brother's house sold for more than expected, and I've got some savings." "It's your savings, Jack. I can't let you—" "Our savings. We're doing this together, remember?" The RV had a wheelchair lift, widened doorways, a modified bathroom, and enough space for both of them to live comfortably. It wasn't fancy, but it was functional. "What do you think?" Jack asked. Della wheeled through it one more time, testing the lift, checking the layout. When she came back out, she was smiling. "I think it's perfect." They bought it that day. The next week was spent setting up their new life. Jack transferred his commercial driver's license. Della set up a mobile hotspot so she could work from the road. They loaded their minimal belongings, said goodbye to Phoenix, and pointed the RV north. "Where are we going?" Della asked as they merged onto I-40. "Wherever the loads take us, that okay?" "That's perfect." The first few weeks were an adjustment, learning to live in a smaller space, learning each other's rhythms and routines, learning how to navigate RV parks and truck stops, and the 1,000 small challenges of life on the road. But they also discovered freedoms they hadn't known existed. They drove through the painted deserts of Utah, the mountains of Colorado, the plains of Kansas. They stopped when they wanted, stayed where they liked, created their own schedule. Della started a blog about accessible travel, sharing tips for disabled people who wanted to see the country. It gained a following. Companies started sending her products to review. Money trickled in. Jack took freight jobs that interested him rather than ones that paid the most. He taught Della the basics of trucking, how to read road signs, how to back up a trailer, how to navigate by instinct when GPS failed. They fought sometimes about directions, about money, about whose turn it was to cook, but they also laughed more than either had laughed in years. 6 months into their journey, they were parked at a rest stop in Montana, when Della said, "I've been thinking." "Oh, shut up and listen." She wheeled closer to where Jack sat at the small dinette table. "I want to make this official." "Make what official?" "Us. This. I don't mean marriage or anything legal, but I want to know we're committed, that this isn't just temporary." Jack reached out and took her hand. "Della, I left my old life behind to be with you. I bought an RV so we could live together. What part of that seems temporary?" "I know, but I need to hear you say it." "Okay, I'm committed. I'm all in. I love you, and I want to spend whatever time we have together. Is that clear enough?" Della's eyes filled with tears. "Yeah, that's clear enough. Do you love me? Against my better judgment?" "Yes." "I love you. Then we're official." They celebrated that night under the Montana stars, and for the first time in either of their lives, the future felt open and full of possibility. Jack and Della had been on the road for 18 months when they found themselves back on Route 66, approaching the diner where they'd first met. "Want to stop?" Jack asked. "Yeah." For old time's sake. The diner looked exactly the same. Half the sign burned out, the other half flickering "Eat." Jack pulled into the parking lot, and they went inside. Doris was still there, still shuffling around with coffee and attitude. She didn't recognize them at first. Then her eyes widened. "Well, I'll be damned, you two came back." "Hi, Doris," Della said. "Coffee?" "Coming right up." They took the same seats at the counter. The diner was empty except for a couple of truckers in the back. "You remember what you said to me that night?" Della asked. "The embarrassing thing about not having sex?" "Yeah, that." Jack grinned. "One of my finer moments. Want to know something funny?" "What?" "That's when I knew you were real. When you said something stupid and honest instead of something polished and fake. That's when I decided you might be worth knowing. So my pathetic confession was actually charming. Pathetic, yes. Charming. Eventually." Doris brought their coffee, eyeing them suspiciously. "You two together now?" "Yeah," Jack said. "We are." "Huh. Never would have guessed it. You both looked pretty broken that night." "We were," Della said. "Still are in some ways. But we're broken together." "That's the secret," Doris said, surprising them both with sudden wisdom. "Finding someone who's broken in compatible ways." After she shuffled off, Della turned to Jack. "So, any regrets?" Jack thought about it. The last 18 months had been challenging, financially, logistically, emotionally. They'd fought. They'd struggled. They'd had moments of doubt. But they'd also seen 43 states, met hundreds of interesting people, built a life that was entirely their own. And most importantly, they'd built it together. "Not one," Jack said. "You? Only that I didn't meet you sooner." "Nah, we met when we needed to. Any sooner and we wouldn't have been ready." Della smiled. "When do you get wise?" "I learned from the best." They finished their coffee, paid Doris, who waved off their tip with a gruff "keep it," and walked back out to their RV. "Where to next?" Della asked. Jack pulled out their map, an actual paper map because some things were better analog. "There's a load in Flagstaff that needs to go to Seattle." "Interested?" "Always." They climbed into the RV, Della using the lift while Jack stowed her wheelchair. Inside, everything was familiar now. Their home, their space, their life. As they pulled out onto Route 66, Jack reached over and took Della's hand. "Hey," he said, "thanks for rolling up to my truck that night." "You mean thanks for tolerating your awkward confession?" "Yeah, that." Della squeezed his hand. "You're welcome. Thanks for not running away when you saw the wheelchair. Wouldn't dream of it." They drove west into the sunset, two broken people who'd found each other on the cracked asphalt and endless neon of America's most famous highway. Jack hadn't had sex in 9 months when he met Della. Now 18 months later, he couldn't imagine a life without her. And that, more than anything, was the real journey.